Experience is always better in a group. The Christian experience doubly so. We're just a group of gamers that love to talk about life, God, and video games, in no particular order. So whether you're a newbie or a grizzled ancient like us, we want to help each other roll the level.
Welcome to another episode of the Roll the Level podcast. My name is Matt, and I'm so excited to dive into today's conversation, talk about life, God, and video games in no particular order. Although, behind the curtains, there is an order. I usually have an outline when we do these things, but it's good. With me, though, I do want to introduce my co-hosts. I've got Sarah. Sarah, how you doing today?
Peachy keen.
Peachy keen. You've all recovered from Extra Life?
Oh, yeah. It took me about 3 hours of sleep on Sunday, and I was all good.
Nice little power nap in there, and you're good to go?
Yep.
Nice.
Ready
And it was good. It was a very good thing. We raised over $2,500 Canadian, which was really exciting. So
everybody's so generous.
It's really good.
Oh.
It was great. So thank you to all those people that donated. We really appreciate that. And Dame, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I have like about 30 things that are like all pulling for my attention right now. And only about 40% of those are not positive things. So,
there you go. Hey, that's 60%.
So I'm on the right side. I'm on the right side of things. So
that's good. It's good. So awesome. Yeah.
And there's a new Destiny expansion that just released.
There
so
is,
I'm
which
doing
we
all right.
have been just going nuts on.
So
I played some
good.
more last night, actually. It was really good. I unlocked some new content. And
I
we're
saw
enjoying
you
it.
online, and
Yeah.
I wanted to reach out and be like, Matt, I'm ready. I want to play more. And
You should have been. I was around.
I would have, except that there were some of those things that are vying for my attention that were vying for my attention last night. So
Yeah. No, that's fair.
and I can't talk about them yet.
That's good. Yeah, no, Destiny 2, the expansion's been really good. I mean, as usual, you get your critics and your crapooies on it, but I don't know. The content's been good. I've enjoyed it.
Same.
For the first time probably since Destiny 2 dropped and I first got an auto rifle called Sweet Business, I have, so however many years ago that was, I finally set it aside. It's in my bank, just sitting there.
I'm proud of you. Change
it was
is
tough,
good for
man.
you.
It was
I
tough
know.
to let go of that gun and try something new. But it's been good. It's been really good. So I'm not necessarily sold on stasis, but that's a debate for another time. So anyway, but today actually I want to talk about something that kind of popped in my head the other day. Actually, I was looking at some video games for Aiden for Christmas and kind of going through the process of like, hey, what do we want to get him and what's he like and what's appropriate. And it got me thinking about some of the games that I played as a kid that really were not probably the best thing for me as a kid. And I'll share mine in a minute. I've talked about some of them before, but what about you guys? Were there games you played as a kid and like in hindsight you're going, yeah, I probably shouldn't have played that as a kid. I don't know. Dame, what about you, man?
Yeah, Duke Nukem 3D.
Okay. Not the same. Not the same. It's okay.
So my neighbors had a PC, and man, when we would go over there, like we'd play games like Duke Nukem 3D, and I remember like initially like seeing that game and like the quips, are fantastic, but there's some questionable content within the game that for a young kid probably not the greatest.
That's fair. Well, that was just a question. Sorry about the quips thing, real quick. What came first, Ash from the Evil Dead or Duke
definitely.
Nukem 3D?
No. It was
right?
totally Bruce
rips,
Campbell.
right?
It was
Yeah,
totally
okay.
Bruce Campbell. Yes.
Okay, that makes me happy. I was a little concerned there for a second because I couldn't remember year-wise which ones came out when. So it's been a long time. But all right, Duke Nukem 3D. Yeah, definitely not an appropriate title for children. We can peg that on that side, but it's good. Sarah, what about you?
Also Duke Nukem 3D.
Yes, I didn't know you played Duke Nukem 3D.
Oh, man. I watched my dad play it. And I'm like, this looks awesome. And I was so young at the time, I didn't really understand the references and stuff.
So
I thought this was awesome. Like, I came from Quake and stuff, and it's like, oh, it's just more shooting of different aliens. It's all good. So I loved that game.
and every time you ran out of bubble gum, you knew exactly what time it was.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's funny. Oh man. Well, mine. I mean, actually, Duke Nukem 3D was definitely on that list for me as a kid. I don't know. I think it was like in every kid's list from the early '90s. But
Probably.
Doom was the other one. The original Diablo. I played that when I was like 8 as well. Probably wasn't the best title. But it's funny because in a lot of ways we were really the first generation to be completely and utterly raised on video games, in the sense that like we didn't know a time before video games. And so, I mean, that first gen of gamers, I mean, we didn't have a lot of those filters. Like even things like the ESBR didn't exist when we first started gaming. Like it's crazy. So it's funny to kind of look at where we've come from and where we are, because it's such a big issue now. What is appropriate for kids and what does that look like? And I think one of the big questions I'd like to tackle today is how do you determine, or what are some of the process you should go through when you're trying to figure out what, A, your kid should be playing, and B, as maybe even an extended relative or something, what you should buy your niece or nephew for video games for Christmas. Like what are your guys' thoughts on this? I'm very curious as to what you guys think. Dane, why don't you start us out, buddy?
Well, this is I'm actually the wrong person to start us out. This
No, you're good, man.
Because
I want your edit perspective.
I have no children.
You have
however,
doggy children.
That's true. I do. Just about every game is appropriate for Padfoot. But especially the violent ones. He needs a little bit more violence in his life.
He's so protective.
It's interesting because I come from a perspective of watching parents not engage with the media that their kids are consuming, both from the church perspective, and also I worked in a video game store at one point in time. And I'm married to a teacher who works with young children. And the number of times that we have conversations about some of the games that the kids are talking about and obsessing over is it is really kind of interesting to watch that. Of course, several years ago it was the big Five Nights at Freddy's craze, which the series is still around. But I think that the big trick is getting to know the content and getting to know what's out there. And there are a couple of resources that I typically point people to. There's one database that's called it's taminggaming.com. It's a dude named I believe it's Andy Robertson. That's a guy that runs this. I got connected with him on Twitter a while back, and he's working on putting together a site to kind of collate some data on games and whatnot. And they've got a bunch of titles that are on there that they've featured as some solid choices for families. But going beyond that, because I think that when we have systems like the PEGI system or the ERSB, we tend to lean really heavily on the rules, right? And I don't know about you guys, but as a kid, like there was that tension in me when even playing those games where it was like I want to follow the rules, but I also want to play the game. So and usually the desire to play the game won out then, stronger than the desire to follow the rules. But we tend to like hardline with those things, right? Where we're like, and I remember this conversation when The Matrix came out. It was, and again, like this is way, way, way long ago.
Yeah.
The Matrix was an R-rated movie, but the content within the Matrix, while very violent, was pretty void of things like nudity or sexual content. The language within it was even fairly tame for an R-rated movie, and so there were those questions of like, well, wait a minute, I thought that this meant I just shouldn't engage with this thing whatsoever. To borrow a Captain Barbosa line, it's more of a guideline.
I kind of feel the same way about Halo in the beginning. I don't think Halo ever deserved its M rating, considering the other M rated games that do.
Yeah.
It was a very tame M rated game.
Mm-hmm. I think that brings up again. That's a great example of that point of, it's not like most things in life. It's, there are exceptions, but most things in life, it's not that just hard, fast, like this, black, white, especially when it comes to engaging with the content.
Right.
There's definitely a need for parents, and I'm speaking as a parent, to be aware on it, and this goes both ways, because I know some parents are like, yeah, go play whatever you want. I'll go to EB or GameStop and buy you that, that 17, that plus 17 game. Sure. Without ever engaging. And the flip side is also true, where it's like, oh no, that's not E for everyone. You can't play that game.
Right. Right. I can't tell you the number of parents that I engaged with in my time working at a video game department of a store that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Yeah, that's right. Can't name drop.
I don't know that the NDA still holds, but
that's right.
No, but no, I can't tell you the number of times that I had talked with parents and they were like, oh yeah, my kid wants my 11-year-old kid wants to play Grand Theft Auto, and I'm going, no. Is that really your best choice? Let me tell you a little bit about this game. So yeah, it's very interesting to see the and every parent has a different philosophy, right? With how they do that. The thing though that I think is most important is that and this goes beyond video games. It's any type of movie, music, video games, media, even in engagement with peers. It's the question of having your filter. Know the lens that you view the world through, filter everything through those lenses, and create environments for your kids to be able to explore those conversations, right? Like it's not just like, oh, I can't play that game because it's not rated E. It's the conversation of, it's probably not good for me to engage with material XYZ because I just don't have a category for how to deal with that. Like showing, and this is one of the things that we're running into with this generation being so connected to the internet. There's exposure to things like pornography at younger and younger ages, and that impacts brain development. And so that, because there's just no category for how to deal with stuff like that. And so the same thing I think carries over into gaming, is helping create those pathways for processing. So you don't have a kid that's exposed to like hyper violence and not know what to do with that. And think that, oh, that's just normal, or that has there, or nothing like that could happen in real life because it's just a video game.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, what are your thoughts on this too? Because I know we've talked about this. It's a pretty big topic.
So many thoughts.
I want to hear them.
Well,
I want to hear them.
No, a lot of it has to do with what Dame said, but to your last point, I don't know, to a lot of points actually. I also worked in a video game department of a retail store that I will not name. But
I feel left out, guys. I've never worked in a video game department of a retail store. I can't name.
I tell you, the amount of times like people came in with their kids and were totally oblivious to the ESRB system, totally ignored it, did not care what was in the game. At least 95% of people still bought the game for their kids. Yeah. And it wasn't until they started fining retailers for selling games to minors that stores started taking notice, like, because it was not a small fine. That's when I know up in Canada, EB Games started really making sure that parents came in and bought the game, and parents knew what's in the game. Like, I can go to EB Games and hear them having good conversations with parents, like telling them about the ESRB, what's on the back of the box. And you should also actually use their website. Their website is much more in depth about every piece of information. But it was just so every time, like, it would mostly make parents angry that they had to come in from their car to buy the game for their kids that they sent in to go buy the M-rated game for themselves. Like, that's where it all came in. Yeah. But I don't know. Like, that's a hard one. And then it's hard nowadays too, because the ESRB falls apart when it comes to Fortnite or Apex because they're online. It doesn't exist online. Don't touch it. Yep. So you don't know what kind of interactions your kids are getting into. They can download it for free. And they will not get that warning of, hey, this is 18 plus, you can't have this. Like it can't go through the parental content if you have that set up. It just falls through. So you have to be intentional about watching your kids, seeing how they act. Like I know personally for me, Lucas loves Nintendo games. Like he is so not into like the violence games. Like everybody in his class is playing Fortnite. And he's so not into Fortnite. Like
that blows my mind.
He likes to dab,
so
but that's
young.
it.
Wow. He's so young, and his whole class.
I know, but everybody
Fortnite.
Everybody's talking about, I'm going to teach my dad how to play Fortnite tonight and stuff. So, and Lucas is like, that's nice.
Yeah.
Cool
I'm
story,
going to go home
bro.
and play Pokemon. Like, but like even, I think this more applies to me with TV with Lucas, because like the way he will watch something with Tyler, and then I just notice the way he acts afterwards is how I will assess a situation. Like if I notice that he's using words from the show, because kids are like little sponges. Like it's crazy.
Yeah,
like they will, even if you don't think they're listening, they 100% are, and it will come out. Like I noticed that this week. It's like, where did you learn that? He's like, oh, this random video I watched on YouTube. It's like, well, I have to watch you watching YouTube more often now because that's not appropriate. Stuff like you have to assess the way they act afterwards. So I noticed that like sometimes if I'm not home, they watch Simpsons. And when I was a kid, Simpsons was taken away because I was too influenced by Simpsons. So now I'm starting to like notice little signs of, hey, we shouldn't be like doing this while mommy's not home anymore.
Just having a little bit more consistency.
Yeah, like both parents got to be on the same page is a big thing, because like you can't send them, like I can't leave him home and be like, okay, you can play like Doom while I'm not here, it's okay, even though mommy said no. Like it's so important for both parents to understand what's going on, be on the same page. I said no to this game, you also have to say no to this game, kind of thing. So
basically what you're saying is if you come home and find Lukey digging through his Lego box going rip and tear, you know that you need to have a
I know
conversation
something's
with
wrong. Because he's not usually a violent kid. Like he's usually like he'll headbutt you sometimes, but that's it. Like
Sarah,
like,
you made a really, really interesting point there. That's a really, really good one for parents to remember in this, is that you guys have to be a unified front.
For
right?
sure.
Yeah, truth.
Like
truth.
You guys are a unit together. That's biblical. There's a oneness, a unity in marriage, that when you are when you're making decisions about things like this, you've got to be consistent with those things. And you also have to be consistent too in yourself. And because, kids will, especially as they get older, will really pick up on inequity and hypocrisy. And especially when they get into being teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where, as you start building in those touch points of understanding, I think that can help alleviate some of that pressure later on. But again, like I'm also speaking as somebody without children, so I'm speaking all in theory, not in practice.
Yeah,
it's good. Well, it's not just theory. I mean, you observed. It's not just theory.
That's true.
I think one more last point, like for me especially, is as a parent, is when you're playing games, act the way that you want your kids to act while playing games. Because I know that, like Tyler, I love him, but he gets angry.
Which is good. Yeah.
Like controller spike angry, and he knows that is not acceptable in front of Lukey, because there was one time where Tyler snapped in front of Lucas, and then the next day I noticed like Lucas is playing Mario and he's like, I can't do this jump, this is stupid. And I was like, dude, this is not okay. He's like, but daddy did it. And it's like, okay. So you have to act like, when I'm playing Mario Party, I'm super competitive and I play with them, and it's like, it's okay that I lost this game. It's okay. Like,
No.
Yeah.
so like I'm very intentional in front of him how I act on playing games. Like I don't get super angry in general, except for like Rock Band. I get super angry when I make a mistake in Rock Band because I am a perfectionist. I want the high score. But other than that, I don't get too angry. But yeah, I have to make sure when Tyler's playing too, it's like, okay, Lucas is watching. I have to tell him, like, if he has headphones on, Lucas is watching. Just let's try not to break another controller. Thank you.
Thank you. Drop the mic. Well, it's interesting. You guys have brought up some excellent points, and just to reiterate some of those things and kind of just kind of focus it in. I think I agree. The unified front is really important, and sometimes that means disagreeing in private and then coming to
Absolutely. Yep.
a point after that. I think that actively engaging with the content, and there's some great resources. You talked about Taming Gaming. Common Sense Media is another one. Is really good. It just gives a breakdown of what's in this game, and they have some good scoring systems and stuff for that, and evaluation systems. I think another really important one, actually two important ones that I've actively tried to do with my kids, and I'm still trying to figure out what it actually means, but it's teaching my kids to process what they're consuming.
Yeah.
So that they again can engage with it and evaluate for themselves, is this actually good for me or not? This is obviously, like, you don't just expose your kids to everything and say, okay, kids, let's figure it out. You got to use your own common sense, but there is this process of, like, when you're playing a video game, even if it's, an E for everyone and something happens, it's creating those moments of discussion. And this means you have to actively parent, you have to actively engage with the video game that you may have zero interest in. But that's parenting, and it's good. So it's training your kids to evaluate what they're consuming and not just consuming it, right? If we had more kids trained to critically think, I think our world would look dramatically different. And so that is a kind of a key component, because, as Dame, you talked earlier about helping your kids create those pathways for processing. Well, this is a big part of it, is as they're playing whatever content it is, it's walking them through it. Tara's really good at this. My wife's really good with this when we're watching movies. I think we let them watch like their first like PG movie the other day, which is a big deal in our house. And it was funny because, like, every time something would come up, like, I could feel Tara just cringing. But then what she would do is she would actively engage with the kids and be like, hey, is that something we would do? Or is that something we would say? Or is that, and again, it was a super tame movie, but for us, it's like putting those building blocks in place of helping the kids stop and actually process what they're consuming.
Sure.
And helping them learn how to actively engage with that. And I think we don't give kids enough credit for how smart and sharp they are. We've already said they're a sponge, and so if they're a sponge, then we need to help them learn how to soak up things well. And so that's part of it. And yeah, exactly. And going along with that is also the idea about fixing our thoughts on what is true, right? Philippians 4:8 talks about this idea, what is good and what is right and what is true. And that's another part of this conversation that's really important. And it's this idea that, video games are great. It's a fun hobby, but we need to always constantly redirect or direct our kids towards the important things in life. Like, it's great that we can have family time together and play video games or whatever it is, but far more important are things like, hey, how is that kid at school that you talked about the other day who was having a hard go? Did you sit with them at lunch? Did you invest in them at lunch? How are things going when you're hanging out with the kids on the street? Are you showing Christ to them? What does that look like? So it's great to have those conversations around video games, but we need to put them in their proper place, both for ourselves and our kids, which sometimes is a good heart check. Because it is very easy to just want to play video games all the time, like Destiny 2 when an expansion drops, WoW when an expansion drops. So
I'm glad our church has a place to invite those kids too. Like, we had the game nights at the church. I know it's like a thing before COVID, but like, it was such a great place to, hey, we have this common ground. We talk about video games, but we can invite them to play in a different space. So
absolutely.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and that's part of this whole thing too, right? Like, as a parent, you want to, like, your kid, the reality of growing up is that they will face, like, crisis of faith, crisis of thought, crisis of belief. That will happen. That's part of development. So as a parent, we have to actively set ourselves up so that the space they're in when those things happen is a safe space for them to process that and talk and ask questions and sometimes hurt through it and work through it and cry through it and laugh through it. And that starts now. It starts when you're sitting down watching the PG movie and going, hey, are those words we really use? Or when they say a word like that they heard, how you respond to that is going to have a dramatic impact when they're, 17 and going, I don't know if I believe in this Jesus thing. Honestly, because if you don't create a safe space where they can work through that when they're young, then those habits won't be in place when they're working through the big life questions. Right. And they will, because everybody does. This is a historical, cultural fact. Everybody has a crisis of faith at some point, a crisis of belief system and stuff like that. And you either go off the rails or you start to own it for yourself. Mm-hmm. And even these conversations around video games and this process of going through it, these are all building blocks for that.
And sometimes the kids, like I said before, like if they come to the church and they do like the gaming nights, sometimes they don't want to talk to people that they know. Sometimes they want to talk to people that they think can help them. And the church is kind of that place to them, like somebody that they can explain the situation to and other people that will care for them in that situation. That's why it's such a great event.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And the beautiful thing about this is these principles we're talking about today in relation to video games, I mean, they translate into other hobbies and other interests and other, things people love to do. If it's working on cars or sports ball or whatever, it's these principles still carry over and are still applicable. Which is pretty exciting stuff. People tend to look at the video game subculture as like this foreign thing that no one understands if you're not in it. But the reality is it's no different than sports culture or gearhead culture or biker culture or, there's rule sets, there's a hierarchy, all those cultural elements are there.
Fandom is fandom.
Fandom is fandom. That's right. And we have this incredible privilege as parents of kids who love video games or to walk with them through this and teach them how to be on mission in the midst of the gaming culture, which is pretty exciting. So,
indeed.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. I know this is a little bit off the beaten trail, but it's one that's been on my head and on my heart. And I wanted to kind of process it with you guys. So thank you for that.
It's that time of year where kids buy presents for their
That's so true. So true. Absolutely. It's exciting too. So it's good. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us once again. You can check us out on all of the social medias. We are definitely there, I think. We do have a website to keep all of our content there. You can check this out on YouTube, or if you like the audio version of the podcast, we are on podbean.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Roll the Level.